Assalamu alaikum. Let's continue. Then a hermit who visited the city once a year came forth and said, "Speak to us of pleasure." And he answered, saying, "Pleasure is a freedom song, but it is not freedom. It is the blossoming of your desires, but it is not their fruit. It is a depth calling onto a height, but it is not the deep nor the high. It is the caged taking wing, but it is not space encompassed. Ay, in very truth, pleasure is a freedom song. And I fain would have you sing it with fullness of heart, yet I would not have you lose your hearts in the singing. Some of your youth seek pleasure as if it were all, and then they are judged and rebuked. I would not judge nor rebuke them. I would have them seek, for they shall find pleasure, but not her alone. 7 are her sisters, and the least of them is more beautiful than pleasure. Have you not heard of the man who was digging in the earth for roots and found a treasure? And some of your elders remember pleasures with regret, like wrongs committed in drunkenness. But regret is the beclouding of the mind, and not its chastisement. But regret is the beclouding of the mind, and not its chastisement, and they should remember their pleasures with gratitude, as they would the harvest of a summer. Yet if it comforts them to regret, let them be comforted. So if we go back, 7 are her sisters, and the least of them is more beautiful than pleasure. Here is where, remember, Khalil Gibran is writing about what Muhammad told the people as far as the wisdom that he gained from the revelations. This, in Khalil Gibran's mind, is what was the last of the advice that Muhammad could give the people. And he's telling people that when you are young, so when you are a baby soul, right? When you are young, when you are lower consciousness, when you are just starting out your journey to wisdom, you will seek only pleasure because it feels good and you're young. You do not know better and what lies beyond pleasure. And so Muhammad al-Mustafa is being told here, is telling the people, I would not judge those that only seek pleasure, meaning I would not judge those that drink and gamble and have lots of pleasure in their lives. I would only ask them to seek further, meaning that these people are stopping at a place of superficiality, of knowledge about the true nature of existence. And when you stop at being drunk and stop at, these physical things that might give you pleasure for a temporary time, you are limiting your own ability to have knowledge of what lies beyond pleasure. And when he's talking about 7 are her sisters, least of them is more beautiful than pleasure, I believe that Khalil Gibran is talking about the 7 sins. That to many people, the 7 different sins of gluttony, envy, wrath, all these things that are considered sins or considered evil by righteous religious people, seem very beautiful to some people. They seem that they are full of pleasure and full of fun for this physical world. And what Khalil Gibran is saying is that is very tempting, to believe that it is all about pleasure and life is all about existence of pleasure. But it is far beyond that. And And to not be mad at those people and to not chastise them or say they're going to hell, but actually to help them seek for something further, to actually ignite the ability to want more enlightenment and understanding that this world is more than just seeking pleasure. It's about, I can't explain exactly what it's about because I can feel it in my heart, but it's far more than just seeking fulfillment on a physical level and pleasure on a physical level. It's about seeking fulfillment on a soul level, and that's something that you can't get through alcohol, gambling, drunkenness, partying, just indulging in pleasure. And that's why I believe that the Quran has many, many places in the Quran where it talks about that, alcohol and gambling, like there may be some benefits for mankind, like it may be fun. There are some times where it can bring people together and there's some benefits in that socially. But in the long run, if you get stuck in that, that's where you're tempted to stay in this physical matrix and this physical world, and it stops you from seeking further. And if you can get past that, if you can see pleasure as a freedom song, meaning that it is something temporary to seek, but it is not true freedom. It is only a song about freedom, but it is not being in essence fully free. To be in essence fully free would have to be spiritually whole and spiritually enlightened, and that's not necessarily what pleasure gives people. And some of your elders remember pleasures with regret, like wrongs committed in drunkenness. But regret is the beclouding of the mind and not a chastisement. They should remember their pleasures with gratitude, as they would the harvest of a summer. Yet if it comforts them to regret, let them be comforted. And there are among you those who are neither young to seek nor old to remember. And in their fear of seeking and remembering they shun all pleasures, lest they neglect the Spirit or offend against it. But even in their foregoing is their pleasure, and thus they do find a treasure, though they dig for roots with quivering hands. But tell me, who is he that can offend the Spirit? Shall the nightingale offend the stillness of the night, or the firefly the stars? And shall your flame or your smoke burden the wind? Think you the Spirit is a still pool, which you can trouble with a staff? Let me say, this is why I believe that some of the teachings today about Islam being a very physically limiting religion is wrong. Because when leaders of Islam teach people that if you drink or if you gamble or if you indulge in the pleasures of this world, you're going to hell, you're following Satan, they're not getting to the core of the truth. Instead, they're locking people into fear of, and it's an extreme of abstinence, and that's kind of what the monks did. And the Quran talks about, it's not about self-denial of things. It's about being able to navigate through the different pleasures on earth, to not become attached to them in any way. When a person drinks, when a person gambles, when a person does things like premarital sex or things that, are seen as not righteous or are immoral in a religious person's mind, they ultimately do not offend Allah. Spirit cannot be offended. But what happens to a person is they get further and further from the truth, of knowing the true essence of their true spirit and nature. Because then they are tempted into only indulging in the physical world. And that can trap a lot of people into not seeking higher states of awareness and consciousness. And I believe that when the Quran revelations came down, they came from a source that was trying to guide mankind out of its trap of physical enslavement and attachment. And so that is why gambling and drunkenness is something that is seen as problematic. It is a way of tempting the soul into lower consciousness acts and into the idea of it's about money, it's about power, and it's about getting drunk and being social and making out with anybody, or beating up people, depending on what kind of drunk you are. And it's a problem when people fall down that hole and they can't get themselves out of it. So yes, there is great temptation on the path of alcohol and gambling and other types of forms of kind of human debauchery that people can get into. But I will say it does nothing to offend Allah. It will not bring you into hell as a punishment. It is about trapping yourself in a lower state of consciousness that could lead to your own punishment later on in terms of the choices that you make. Because as we know, when people are drunk, they do not make the greatest choices in life. Drunk driving kills people. We know that now. People make really bad choices. Relationships are ruined on alcohol. People are angry and more emotional, and fights break out on alcohol. So it's about taming yourself. It's about self-discipline of your own soul. Religion should never get involved with the spiritual journey of individuals. We should never have religion mixed in with a governing body. And that's the problem that we have in some of the Muslim countries. They have mixed Islam in with the rights and the governing institutions of the citizens. Islam is far more beautiful, far more freer than that. And that's why there's this weird discrepancy where we see Islam as, spiritual Muslims like me, actual spiritual, true, devout Muslims like me will see this discrepancy. We see what the institution of Islam in a governing body has become versus what we have been taught with revelations and the messages that enter our hearts and are awakened in our intuition when we read the Quran ourselves. There's a discernment, and I believe that's part of the test. If you blindly follow these governing institutions that are lashing people 1,000 times, beheading people, throwing people in jail for alcohol, you are following the wrong path. You are following people that have lost their way and their truer understanding of the spiritual knowledge within Islam. And that's why Khalil Gibran is saying that a true enlightened person, such as a prophet from God, would understand this, would not seek to condemn those that seek for pleasure for themselves. Instead, they would educate them. They would help them, as their fellow human beings have become trapped in this hole of suffering, to believe that alcohol and drugs and gambling would actually give them a temporary sense of joy and pleasure. All they need is education and to be lifted out from that. Oftentimes, in denying yourself pleasure, you do but store the desire in the recesses of your being. Who knows but that which seems omitted today waits for tomorrow? How true is that? Is that when we have priests, Catholic priests, that have denied themselves the pleasure of enjoying a woman that they love and committing themselves to a life of abstinence, instead they have been tempted by their hidden desires that are repressed within them to prey on the only things that are right in front of them, which are the altar boys. I mean, that is what we have learned about and why it happens. It's not that the priests themselves are evil. It's that, well, their choices make them, kind of evil because they enforce their will on others, especially young children. But it's that they have repressed a part of themselves that is naturally desiring to feel pleasure between another human being. Sex is not evil. Not if it is experienced through true love and aligning and connecting to each other's soul. And priests never should have denied themselves that, because when you deny yourself any kind of pleasure, you will try to look for it in other ways. And unfortunately, a lot of people have been hurt in that. By them repressing, they have caused some harm on others. And in a less serious note, take diets, for example. You repress yourself from never having chocolate cake or never having sweets, and you say, you know what, I'm going on a diet, I'm never having sugar, I'm never eating this. Guess what? You end up probably devouring sugar at some point, because it's not about abstinence. It's about learning to take a little and letting go of it, enjoying it for a moment and letting go of it. That is true knowledge. That is true wisdom. That is living the path of the middle way. And that's why the Quran talks about don't have self-denial like the monks did or the priests did in their interpretations of religion. But don't overindulge like the pagans did with their orgies and their craziness, their debauchery with their 300 goddess and god rituals that they would do. Those are two extremes. Self-denial and self-indulgence are basically on the same spectrum of losing the pathway to God. The true pathway to God is the middle way. Being able to rise above the temptations and then also being able to enjoy life. Enjoy the experiences that we have been given. Enjoy the gifts of each other. Enjoy the fruits of this earth. Enjoy everything that is made for us, wine, everything that is on earth. But then to know when to quit, and to know when to give it up, and to know when you go too far, and then to come back. That is true wisdom. That is true knowledge. Who knows but that which seems omitted today waits for tomorrow? Even your body knows its heritage and its rightful need and will not be deceived. And your body is the harp of your soul, and it is yours to bring forth sweet music from it, or confused sounds. And now you ask in your heart, how shall we distinguish that which is good in pleasure from that which is not good? Go to your fields and your gardens, and you shall learn that it is the pleasure of the bee to gather honey of the flower. But it is also the pleasure of the flower to yield its honey to the bee. For to the bee a flower is a fountain of life, And to the flower, a bee is a messenger of love. And to both bee and flower, the giving and the receiving of pleasure is a need and an ecstasy. People of Orphalese, be in your pleasures like the flowers and the bees. How true is that? One of the ways that the Catholic priests that take a vow of celibacy, or the nuns, look at nature. Look at nature and understand that there is beauty in sex. There's beauty in reproduction. There's beauty in that exchange that we can give each other as humans. Sure, if people want to make self-denial their path and they want to, do that, but please don't say it's from God. And don't say that that's the only righteous path to take, because it's not. And in fact, it has done the opposite for some people. For some people, it has driven them to have a desire, and they have done bad things in place of their self-denial. So, Khalil Gibran understood this. And I can definitely see a prophet of God, answering this way when the people ask, "Oh, should we be having sex with each other? I mean, should I be sleeping with my wife?" And a prophet of God is not only there to just give messages, but is there to comfort the people. Because in a time of need is when the messages come, right? So at that particular time in that nation, when that messenger becomes, a visible person to them, the job of the messenger is not just to give a message and leave. Job of the messenger, if they are truly aligned to God, is to comfort and to spread love. Because that's what we come from. And a messenger is closer to that source because they are open to it as a channel of the divine messages in order to spread to others. And a poet said, "Speak to us of beauty." And he answered, "Where shall you seek beauty? And how shall you find her unless she herself be your way and your guide? But how shall you speak of her except she be the weaver of your speech? The aggrieved and the injured say, Beauty is kind and gentle. Like a young mother half shy of her own glory, she walks among us. And the passionate say, Nay, beauty is a thing of might and dread. Like the tempest, she shakes the earth beneath us and the sky above us. And the tired and the weary say, Beauty is a soft whisperings. She speaks in our spirit. Her voice yields to our silences like a faint light that quivers in fear of the shadow. But the restless say, We have heard her shouting among the mountains, and with her cries came the sound of hoofs, and the beating of wings, and the roaring of lions. As you can see, beauty is truly in the eye of the beholder. That the way someone filters from their own experiences is how they will see beauty. A person who is injured and has not been taken care of and has had a hard life, they will see beauty in things that are kind and gentle towards them. In a person who is more passionate, fiery, and they truly want to be moved by experiences, they will see beauty as a thing of might, of a thing that can shake the earth, like an earthquake or a hurricane or act of nature. And they will find that beautiful. And the tired and the weary will say that beauty is of soft whisperings, meaning someone who is tired, weary of this world will see that beauty is in comfort. So all the different ways that we see beauty is because we are looking for that to fulfill something within our own lack of life at that moment in time. I can say, and I can attest, my view of beauty is truth. I believe that everything true is beauty. And I believe that I see beauty this way because I am seeking for more truth in the world at this point, because I see so many lies and illusions in the world. So my view of beauty is truth because that's what I'm looking for. So Khalil Gibran understood that different perspectives would see beauty, and that's why beauty is very subjective. There's not one type of beauty that fits the mold of what everybody's looking for. There could be a physical beauty that's kind of, people can see as sharing in the same traits and qualities that everybody's kind of looking for. But in terms of subjective emotional tie, you really have to be looking for that type of beauty. At night the watchmen of the city say, "Beauty shall rise with the dawn from the east." And at noontide the toilers and the wayfarer say, "We have seen her leaning over the earth from the windows of the sunset." And in winter say the snowbound, "She shall come with the spring leaping upon the hills." And in the summer heat the reapers say, "We have seen her dancing with the autumn leaves, and we saw a drift of snow in her hair." All these things have you said of beauty, yet in truth you spoke not of her, but of needs unsatisfied. And beauty is not a need, but an ecstasy. It is not a mouth thirsting, nor an empty hand stretching forth, but rather a heart inflamed and a soul enchanted. It is not the image you would see, nor the song you would hear, but rather an image you see though you close your eyes, and a song you hear though you shut your ears. It is not the sap within the furrowed bark, nor a wing attached to a claw, but rather a garden forever in bloom, and a flock of angels forever in flight. Yeah, that's how I see beauty too. The true reality. A garden forever in bloom, a garden of bliss, and their companions the angels. That dimension of consciousness is where I see ultimate truth and beauty. And Khalil Gibran saw that too. That's really cool. People of Orphalese, beauty is life when life unveils her holy face. But you are life, and you are the veil. Beauty is eternity gazing at itself in a mirror. But you are eternity, and you are the mirror. There's some deep stuff right there. And hopefully it got to some of these people. I mean, it didn't happen, but I'm saying, if it did, this is something that could change a society for the better if this type of wisdom was really embodied and they actually saw each other as eternal beings instead of, just Bob or Sue. And an old priest said, "Speak to us of religion." And he said, "Have I spoken this day of aught else? Is not religion all deeds and all reflection? And that which is neither deed nor reflection, but a wonder and a surprise ever springing in the soul, even while the hands hew the stone or tend the loom? Who can separate his faith from his actions, or his belief from his occupations? Who can spread his hours before him, saying, this for God and this for myself, this for my soul and this other for my body? All your hours are wings that beat through space from self to self. He who wears his morality, but as his best garment, were better naked. The wind and the sun will tear no holes in his skin. And he who defines his conduct by ethics imprisons his songbird in a cage. The freest song comes not through bars and wires. And he to whom worshipping is a window to open but also to shut, has not yet visited the house of his soul, whose windows are from dawn to dawn. This is one of the major problems that we have today. People have separated spirituality from religion. We have religious people, but they are not spiritual. We have spiritual people, but they are not religious. Khalil Gibran is saying everything that he has been talking about, all the spiritual knowledge that he has been given, is in essence religion. Religion is a way of life, a pathway back to God. Your spirituality is your true essence of yourself and the way that you express that path to God. Religion becomes the way that you self-discipline and you set certain standards and certain ethics and morals in your life to abide to in order to move on to the path of God. And a person that is religious and they pray, they open the window to God, then they close it, and then they go about doing their own self, their own life, but they think separate, that they're separate from God, and they only open that portal when they pray. That is a person that isn't living fully in their religion. That is not somebody who is living truly in the house of God. A person who is living in the house of God will have never shut that window and opened it and closed it. It will be an open window always. I mean this when I say it. An awakened person will not be able to shut off that light that dawned inside of you. An indigo will not be able to turn off the faith or the trust or belief in the unseen. They have seen with their heart, they have seen it with their intuition, they have seen it with their third eye, and things are clearer now to them, and they will not be able to turn that off. When you are in that state, and prayer is not just something that you go to confession to, or you go to a mosque and then you shut the door on God throughout the day and then you go back. When you are truly aligned, your soul is truly aligned, you are always connected to God. You are always connected to Allah. And there are moments when you can feel more of a connection when you are in prayer, but you are never disconnected. Allah is always within you as creational energy and around you as creational energy. And when you are aligned to that truth of where you come from, you will make the right choices daily in your life, you will have a happy, peaceful life. Your daily life is your temple and your religion. Whenever you enter into it, take with you your all. Take the plow and the forge and the mallet and the lute, the things you have fashioned in necessity or for delight. For in reverie you cannot rise above your achievements, nor fall lower than your failures. And take with you all men. For in adoration you cannot fly higher than their hopes, nor humble yourself lower than their despair. And if you would know God, be not therefore a solver of riddles. Rather look about you, and you shall see Him playing with your children. And look into space, you shall see Him walking in the cloud, outstretching His arms in the lightning and descending in rain. You shall see Him smiling in flowers, then rising and waving His hands in trees. God is all around. So at some point, don't be somebody who is constantly, I'm guilty of this because I want to solve riddles, but at times I do know when, okay, this is enough, I will never get to this answer, and that is fine. Because there are some things I will just not know in my physical form of me. I just will not know. And that's okay. And we as humans, we need to be okay with that. And if we can truly be okay with that and with the not knowing, is when we can start to enjoy Allah that we see in nature, we see in each other, and we see in the light of the truth that shines through when we are aligned and when we are seeking for it. Okay, I'm going to stop there, but I think I have one more video and then be done. I was really wanting to finish this series. I just feel it's really important because there's so much truth to the way that Islam is being shown in this book that the media and the wars in the Middle East have just brought about a whole other view of Islam that's wrong, and it has misled a lot to believe that that's the truth. So I'm going to finish this book. I'm really excited to do this and finish this series. So I will see you guys on the next video. Salam.